Okay, I don't know if there was anything you were ever really, really scared of, but for me, I really, really, really hate reading out my own work. So, I mean, a lot of people talk about the book of your heart, whatever that means. And I think for a novelist, it's the kind of book that you want to write. Nobody's told you that anyone wants to publish it or that the market's right or that. It's just, you get an idea and you think, this is a book I'd really like to write because I'm really interested. And it's set in Poland. Most of you probably know my mum's Polish, so I've been to Poland, many times over the years and sort of seen it as a developing country. And part of my family comes from Krakow, representative really of where Poland was. You've got the fashions of Europe and the sort of fact that you could be anywhere in Europe in Krakow, but at the same point you've got kind of political things going on which make it really interesting. This was Poland didn't exist at this point. It had been conveniently carved up following the Polish enclave where it was allowed to be Polish, and in fact, so considering there's some men in the audience, I thought I won't read you a mushy bit and then read you my duel scene, because duels were actually illegal in England by the early 19th century, but in Poland it's still fair game. They had ridden through the breaking dawn to Belica forest on the edge of the city. It was misty and cold, and Henry was glad he'd accepted the thick wool cloak Marek had offered him for the ride. Here's the spot. Marek drew to a halt just before a clearing. We'll tie the horses here. Henry dismounted, his boots landing on the ground with a crunch. He tethered his mounts beside Marek and looked about him. There was nobody else in sight. He pulled out his watch and flicked it open. They were quite early. He said, "I'm pleased you know your way round this forest. Extensive, isn't it?" Marek dusted off his cuffs and strode ahead towards the clearing. Even the Swedes couldn't raise it in 1655, though they destroyed Belica village. The palace is rebuilt in the Italian style by a certain heiress. Marek flashed a grin, but we will not disturb her sleep from here. This clearing has been used for duels before, frequently. Henry wondered whose blood he might be treading on. A prickle of unease tickled the back of his neck. Duelling is such a foolish business, Marek said as he paced out the grounds, but a clever fool does his groundwork, eh, Henry? Henry was unable to laugh or make a remark back. Shortly after dawn, somebody was going to die, and there remained the tiniest fear in his chest that the gentleman in question could be him. He shivered, as if, as they say, someone had walked over his grave. Henry Edmund Champion, born 1784, died 1817 in unfortunate circumstances overseas. Rest in peace. No, he had too much to do back in England, he'd decided. His life must have a purpose, and he must do everything he could to try and get into Parliament. He'd strive to change some of the cruelties his fellow men inflicted on those unable to represent themselves. No doubt it would have been easier to be a man of less honour. He could have escaped to England yesterday and not stayed here to fight a duel with a man who apparently had no honour. "You'll slay him with your honour," Marek had said. In the end, honour always triumphs, did it? Did evil not triumph sometimes? The snap of a twig pierced his reverie, and Henry looked up. Zakonski, followed by a man he did not recognise, walked towards him. "Here early, I see," Zakonski said. "May I present Pan Gregorz Radziwill, my second?" Radziwill seemed to shake hands begrudgingly. He had an ugly scar across his forehead and looked more like a footpad than a gentleman. Henry wondered if he'd indeed been one of the footpads who'd accosted him that evening when they'd first gone to see the Countess. He pushed Annabel's memory quickly from his mind. He did not want to think about her now. "Would you like to inspect the ground yourself before we start?" Marek said to Zakonski. "Certainly," Zakonski and his henchman went off to pace the clearing for themselves. "A pleasant pair," Marek remarked in a low voice. "Keep an eye on them. They appear to have come alone, but we don't want any surprises. I'm going to check where their horses are and check that we're really alone." Marek departed. Alone. Yes, he felt alone, but with two enemies only yards away. Henry tried to slow his breathing. It was too fast. The dark-leaved boughs of the forest were closing in on him. He shook himself. He had to remain calm. He was imagining things. Marek returned a few moments later. "The horses are tethered close to ours. Everything seems to be in order. I can't see any evidence of anyone else being here, but we must remain on our guard." "Yes. How are you feeling, Henry? You look a little pale." "I'm not looking forward to this." "You know what to do. Simply shoot him in the arm, his pistol arm, of course. Wound him, then honour is preserved. And if he's quicker than me?" "He won't be, as we intend to cheat, remember. You must turn around just before the counting is over, as we agreed. When I say 19, bang." Marek smiled. "We go home for a hunter's breakfast." "And if Zakonski cheats?" Henry kept this thought to himself. He was not a good shot. He was a good shot, he knew that. He was sure he could get the pistol arm from 40 paces if he had a moment to concentrate and aim, but did he have that moment? Their plan was hardly foolproof. "Time to begin, gentlemen, I believe," Zakonski called over to them. "You've brought the pistols, Walensky, have you not? I should like to inspect them." "Of course, you may pick first, as agreed." Marek opened his bag and took out a small rosewood box of duelling pistols. "They were my father's," he remarked. Henry began to grow irritated. This was no time for nostalgia. Marek held the box open as Zakonski picked up each pistol in turn and inspected it. At last he made his decision, and Henry withdrew the remaining pistol. A thought suddenly occurred to him. He'd not inspected both pistols. Could he really trust that Marek had not tampered with anything? Of course he could. Marek would not betray him to Zakonski. His hands trembled as he loaded the pistol with powder. The niggling doubt would not go away. Not even as they turned their backs on one another, and Marek began the count. 1, 2, 3. 1 foot in front of the other, as though he was a clockwork figure wound out for the amusement of the child. Henry tightened his grip on the pistol. 9, 10, 11. He checked again that the pistol was fully loaded. He felt his finger trembling against the trigger.